Hi, I'm Tristan. I use they, them pronouns. I am a agender, queer, disabled, neurodivergent survivor living on the East Coast of the United States. I am a white, thin person wearing all black and a studded leather jacket in a black spinny chair with bright red lipstick and a light teal mohawk with facial piercings in my white bedroom. I feel like a lot of people sort of perceive survivorship, and especially trans and non-binary survivorship, as this really depressing existence where we're all kind of just barely scraping by at all times. And I really believe in living a life of resistant passion and joy in the face of that. I'm disabled and progressively ill, so by some standards, my life is quote unquote small. And at the same time, I find so much joy in the little things like coffee shops and other people's dogs and activism. I do a lot of work in various disability justice mutual aid spaces and Palestinian liberation and harm reduction work, which to me all comes back to queer survivorship and disability justice. I don't think any issues exist in silos, and that healing for some people relies on the healing for all people. I was born with a disability called cerebral palsy that has affected me my entire life. And additionally, I was diagnosed with a really aggressive progressive illness about 3 years ago that is very painful and not treatable, which is like winning the genetic lottery. It's really informed how I think about disability justice and queer survivorship and my own experience of survival, because I think when I thought I had unlimited time to be on this planet and do all the work and do everything I wanted to do with healing my own and in community, I sort of took for granted my ability to wallow in suffering. And I took for granted the way that people my age tend to joke about mental illness and things like suicide and things like trauma without actually doing things about it. Now that I know that I'm really, really sick, I feel much more passionate about rolling up my sleeves and getting shit done because there's not time. So that really drives how I think about my own healing and queer survivorship in general, and definitely disability justice, is like, I can't be patient. I have to do the work now, but I also can't be urgent because then I'm not effective. And I'm also self-reliant, and I don't necessarily think that other people are going to be here to do the work after me. And I don't trust that other people are going to sustain the project. And to me, healing is all about trust. It's all about cooperation and coalition. And those are the values that really tie survivorship and disability justice together for me. So what is it going to take to heal? Forge is the leading national trans and non-binary focused anti-violence project. They've been around for 27 years, which is just over how long I've been alive. And I am their disability and trauma project coordinator. I started with Forge 3 years ago as their policy and programming intern, and was really fortunate to be hired on to continue work focusing on disability and trauma, which are the loves of my life. The work that I do with Forge sustains me in a real emotional way, because I've done a lot of work since I was a teenager in various anti-violence and sexual assault and domestic violence agencies that have focused predominantly on the stories of what happened to people. And that's all really meaningful work. And I'm honored to continue to remember those stories and to have done the work that I've done with survivors. And at the same time, one of the things I love most about Forge is that we focus on resilience and empowerment and connection. We focus on taking the scar tissue and learning to live with it in our bodies and in our minds in a way that's somehow transformative and powerful, so that the entirety of ourselves become vessels for healing in our own lives and our relationships and the world. It's funny to think of myself as having grounded passion because of all the days that I still struggle to get out of bed or get anything done. And reflecting on that, it reminds me of how in a lot of queer activist spaces in particular, there's sort of this performative element of like being on our A game all the time, never allotting ourselves time to rest. And I think for me, that's where disability justice is so important, is like it's all about the sanctity of rest too. So thinking about grounded passion, it comes for me from a place of growing up with really extreme violence and then experiencing more violence as an adult. I grew up experiencing various kinds of child abuse, including sexual abuse, and was re-victimized multiple times as an adult through intimate partner violence and other kinds of harm. As a queer disabled person, really showed me the underbelly of what's missing. And by learning what's missing, I became really passionate about doing whatever small things I can to help fill in the blanks, so that as a community, as a collective, we can help keep each other safe and build worlds where this doesn't have to happen to other people and where we can heal together. Because one of the biggest things that I've found missing in my healing journey, and that I hear from other trans and non-binary survivors again and again, is that we're not allowed into healing spaces. We're just not welcome there, because so many of them are gender segregated in ways that we're either like point blank not welcome in, or we don't feel safe in, even if we're tacitly let in the door. And then there's the added disability component of like, even if we're allowed in the door, can we access that space physically and with any like neurodiverse needs that we have? And so often the answer is no. So my passion at Forge and in all the outside work that I do is to create opportunities for healing, and also just demands for healing that say we're still here and we're still queer and we're gonna survive this together. So what is it gonna take to heal? I think resilience and self-care are two really obnoxious buzzwords going through the trauma and healing communities right now, and several other communities too. So if you hear me talking about words like resilience and self-care, please keep listening. Don't hang up just yet. My perspectives on resilience and self-care is that they're fucking brutal. They're gritty and they're messy. And I know a lot of people say it's not all bubble baths. Like sometimes you read a book, but that's not what I mean either. Like it's not just like reading a book and getting comfy in bed. That's great too, if that's what you want to do. I love a good book. But to me, resilience and self-care is sometimes it means bloodying your knuckles. Like it is hard work to take care of ourselves when the world teaches us that we don't deserve to exist. That is hard work. And as a disabled trans and non-binary person, I have been taught that I do not deserve to exist on this planet. So self-care for me means doing everything I possibly can to survive on this planet that does not want me to be here. It means getting up and eating breakfast. It means, attending protests where things get scary if that's something I can do, or being active digitally online if I can't get out of bed, but it's still something I care about. It means building communities where my friends know to check in on each other when we're having a bad day, because sometimes we're all we've got. It means staying in bed if that's the best I can do, because staying in bed is a hell of a lot better than getting out of bed and doing something I'd regret. It means going to therapy when therapy means ripping my guts out. It means not picking up the phone when somebody calls that I actually shouldn't be talking to, even when most of society says, you know, you should call your mother. No, I shouldn't. No, I shouldn't. Don't pick up the phone. That's self-care. Sometimes it means crying my eyes out for hours. Sometimes it means inviting other people to terrifying medical appointments with me while they see me go through things that would embarrass me. Self-care to me, I guess that's a really long list, and some of it's particular to me. It's about humility and courage. It is doing the things that terrify me and sometimes make me feel completely in touch with my really messy mortality and humanity, and doing those things anyway, because at the end of the day, what I want most in this world is to live as vibrantly as possible with the people I love and the people I haven't had a chance to love yet, because there are so many of them. And I think that's the biggest thing that survivorship has taught me, is that even in the darkest times of my healing, when there was not a person in this world that I loved, not a single human, later there were so many of them. And so when it gets dark again, I just remember that there's so many more people that I'm going to meet that I am going to love. America is built on a really settler colonial binary system, and for some people that really works, and that's awesome if you're one of them. And for me, I wasn't one of them. And I didn't realize that I'm agender until after I was assaulted again as an adult. And I think there's a really big narrative or myth in a lot of dominant trans spaces that people are supposed to be able to prove that they've been trans since the day they were born, and trauma had nothing to do with it, and they were supposed to be able to point back to this time they were 3 and they did these trans things that show that they were actually this gender and all these things, right? And that was not true for me at all. Not true, just not true. I remember being in therapy for well over a year, playing the trans therapy game where like I constructed this really intense narrative that it was true for me because I was trying to be legitimized, and it was traumatizing as hell. Like that was its own trauma. So I just want to state for the record that like I hear you if that's something you're going through, and I'm sorry, because that's a real thing in America. We're forced to play the game, and I'm sorry, and I want to talk about it, and you're not alone. So I realized after I was assaulted again as an adult that I'm actually non-binary, and for me that looks like being agender, which means I just don't identify as having any gender at all. It just doesn't apply. Check no boxes, fill in no blanks, just no, nothing. And claiming that to me, there have been a lot of things that have saved my life. I don't think any of it would have been possible if I didn't claim that, because as long as I was playing any kind of gender game, I was killing off parts of myself to try to fit in a box to earn scraps from society so that I could get by. And life is so much fuller now that I give no fucks.